Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. In this video we're going to look at my Cymbidiums while I water them. So you have to put up with the clanging, but the clanging is as far away from the camera as I can get it, so it shouldn't be too loud for those of sensitive dispositions. The reason is that as soon as I've watered these and got them put back where they go, I'm going to start organising staining my pieces of timber to make my bonsai staging. And as a consequence, that's going to sort of take over the grow room. And the purpose is to get the Cymbidiums outside. Once the Cymbidiums go outside onto the staging, being top heavy plants, they are very capable of being blown off the top of the staging. So the pots will be wired onto the staging, and that's where they stay until they come back in the autumn. So picking them up and turning them around and looking at them closely will be off the cards. We can still move the camera around them and have a look at them while they're outside and, you know, in their main growing areas and everything, but we lose the ability to handle the pots because they will need to be strapped on to stop them blowing over in the wind. You can do untold damage, you know, growths can be broken, leaves bent, irrecoverable once they get a kink in them, and at the moment my plants aren't looking bad. I'd rather they stayed like that. So that's the idea, and that was the only place I could put the camera to get far enough away to look at the whole plant, because obviously they're large plants. There's no point in having the camera here like I normally do, because I'd have to go over there when I'm supposed to be watering them. So that's why the camera's over there, which meant I had to get one of the shelves cleared off before I put the camera up. But let's get these done. They're on the floor at the moment, so we'll pick each one up and have a look. Now this is the bronzy coloured hybrid. Is that close enough? No, it's not really. I'm going to have to hold them, aren't I? Which is a nuisance, but there we go. Right, so what we've got here is a multitude of new growths. If I start with this one here, I can identify it because there's a sawn off spike behind it. Nice strong new growth here. 1, 2, 3 in the background here, yeah, in the plant. So 1, 2, 3, and we've only got a quarter of the way round. 3, and we've got a bit of a gap. And we've got 4, another one here, nice strong new growth. We've got another one here just starting. 5, we get to here. 6, 7, 8. 8 new growths on this Cymbidium, and at the moment there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bulbs. So that plant by the end of the growing season will have doubled its size. In doing so, it will have filled the pot. There is room for the new growths. The only one that's going to have a bit of a struggle will be this one. Hopefully it will push its way around here into a bit of space. So they've all got room to grow and produce their bulb. Whether we get 8 spikes or not remains to be seen. If every new growth produces a spike, that will, in my mind, identify the fact that the treatment they're getting, the light, the fresh air, the feed type of and level of was all good stuff. Otherwise I won't get the bloom spikes. You see what I mean? You can get your environmentals not quite right and grow a smashing plant but no blooms. You can get the opposite. You can get very weak growths and everything like that that bloom and sap the whole strength of the plant. So what you need is a butcher's dog jobby as far as the growing is concerned, with the biggest, fattest bulbs you can get, with good quality leaves that photosynthesize and a good root system below, which naturally follows on unless your media's rubbish. All of these have relatively recently been repotted, all my Cymbidiums, without exception. So yeah, and that's just a matter of getting some water in it. This has got a high level of feed in it, I've got 8 new growths on this plant. I would like them to progress. For those interested in that sort of thing, the feed that's in here is my MSU feed, which was 425 parts per million. I then added calcium nitrate because I want a good nitrogen kick. We are producing green growth here. We need nitrogen, and the nitrogen level in my MSU is okay for gentle growing, but not for producing stonking growth like I'm hoping these will do. So the calcium nitrate was taken up to 540, which is the level it's currently at. And I was going to say, and I seem to have acquired a wire. We need to go Cowfill with that. That's the thermostat for the heater. Let me just get that out of the way, somewhere safe. That's because it was gently hooked around the light and not fixed properly. Needs to be fixed properly. Let's do it while I talk about it. I need a grabby clip, don't I? Big one. Yeah, quite big. Not sure I've got any really big ones left. There we go. It's got to be able to go round the light. So if we put that back up there, and put it round. Oh. It needs to just dangle over in the corner here somewhere. It's not essential. And then we'll. Is that clip going to go round there? Yeah, that's got it. There we go. That's just the waggly leaves got it. So we've got some routine maintenance while we were at it. Right, so that's that one. That's a no ID hybrid. Growing very well, very pleased. That's number one. I can't put it back on the shelf, the camera's in the way. There's a lot of bending going on here that I could do without. Never mind, I'll live. Right, so this one is, this is Jamie Red, so this is a named hybrid. What we've got here is a growth pattern that is odd, because I've got new growths that are pushing on quite well, and I've got what looks like the start of some more. So they're erratic, they're not all coming out together like the last one basically was. And I've even got a root coming out the top of a bulb here. So what we've got here then is down in there, which you might be able to see on the end of my finger, is a new growth starting. I'm going to call it a growth because it's unlikely to be a spike. And these new growths have grown on, they're difficult to identify. There's another one right in the middle of the plant there, and then there's another one that you can clearly see here. Now, given that the new growths on here have actually produced their bulbs, these could be spikes. Well, they always say a spike will have a hollow feeling to it. I always say, why don't you just give it another fortnight? Anyway, this one has something growing, but its latest growths are bordering on maturity. So this one's at a different stage. And if those bulbs are mature, then anything else that grows in the near future is highly likely to be a spike. And there are what looks like could be spikes coming out. So this may be one of those that you get most Cymbidiums. Spikes are triggered by the shorter days and cooler evenings of the end of summer. That produces the embryo spikes. Those go on to bloom normally in the winter or early spring. But there is a set of Cymbidiums whose life cycle is more geared up to blooming in the summer or early autumn. This could be one of those. Because if these are spikes, they've obviously got to grow, you know, they've got to do that and get buds that swell and then open. So, you know, now If at some point in the not too distant future I identify that these are spikes, in theory I should switch the feed to a low nitrogen feed to push the blooms on. Would I mix up a separate feed for one Cymbidium? Probably not. I'll let you know. I have got the appropriate feed, but whether I could be bothered to do it for one Cymbidium, I don't know. Would be a bit of a faff, wouldn't it? Anyway, we will see what happens here, because these are an unknown. As I said, the growths on this have grown well and produce nice bulbs. And therefore, logically, what's coming up now could be spikes. If it is spikes, there's 3 of them. We shall see. As yet unknown. Right. Now we've got to come over here. Get my geranium out of the way. I'm doing these in the same order as we looked at them last time. So you could go back and have a look at the previous video if you wanted. Right, this is the last one in bloom. This is Tiger Tail. And this is the last spike starting to go now. Tips go, everything like that. It's going to be difficult to... Oh, that's light. This needs watering. This plant is not as good as it could be. Can you see why? Look at the bulbs, not the new growths, not the dozens of new growths coming out. Look at the old bulbs. They're all shriveled. Yeah? So this one hasn't been getting hydrated properly, or hasn't got very good roots, or both, because they will be one and the same. Nonetheless, if we go from the tag, behind the tag is a new growth here, yeah, and then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 new growths on there, all at a similar stage. This effectively is actually a miniature. If you take away the size of the pot and now have a look at the size of the leaves compared with the previous 2 that we were looking at, this is quite a compact plant. So it has smaller bulbs for obvious reasons. But the new growths are coming on well. Some are just starting, some are pushing on. See if I can find the most advanced one. The most advanced one is this one here. So that's the most advanced one with the leaf starting to open. All the others are in, you know, spike type format without leaves separating off yet. So that needs some work. And with that number of new growths, what does it need more than anything? Good light and heavy feed. What are we growing? Are we growing spikes? No, we're growing green stuff and hopefully some roots. What does that need? Nitrogen. That's why these have got the feed they're getting. Cymbidiums are classed as heavy feeders, but don't feed them heavily when they're not doing anything. Like most orchids, they will have a very active period when they're pushing on and pushing growths out. Well, that's the time you put the feed in. As I say, this one's coming to the end of its blooms now. I could actually take those spikes off, but the new growths are already there. What will it achieve? You see what I mean? It's not like, oh, I need to get rid of the blooms so that it comes back into growth. It's already in growth, so you know, we don't have to worry. It's doing everything, as they say. Right, next we've got my miniature that one day will be a nice big plant, I hope. But at the moment it was bought as a very young plant. Oh, blow me, we like that. I was going to say it was bought as a very young plant. This is the bulb that I've grown, yeah, and matured, and it bloomed. And this is the nice strong new growth coming off of it. And we have another growth coming off the previous bulb. So in theory, 2 new growths equals 2 blooms. Should be. No guarantees, but again, you know, it's growing. It's not growing, it's not going mad. You know, it's only a small plant, it's a young plant. But it is an actual miniature, so you don't get a clouded view thinking that you know, it's a young plant, but I suspect it was a division because the oldest bulb is a big one. So yeah, it's not been grown on from a seedling. It was once, but this was a division, and yet it was big enough to bloom. Well, I bought it in bloom. So, and that's the showgirl, that one. The little cutie, as people have called it. Ooh. Right, let's get back to some more big stuff. What? So I've just seen damage on a leaf. That's physical damage, not chewed damage. Now on the label this says Cymbidium come on mouth, more coffee. Cymbidium hybrid cream. The tag's wrong. This is in fact Cymbidium copper. The same as the other one. Both plants that came out of the same pot and originally were deemed 2 separate ones because of the colour of the blooms. That has since been rectified. They are both the same plant, and the change in the colour is highly likely due to light levels and feed levels and type of feed, which they didn't get because they were thrown outside, including heat waves, not given any morning sun or anything like that, and had the hose chucked on them. And the only feed they got last summer in the growing season was some slow release granules that were got for my bonsai. And it was 555, and I'm not even sure there was trace elements in there. So, but what this one's doing then, this was a portion of the plant, turned out to be a separate plant in actual fact. So you've got 2 old bulbs, yeah, nice big fat ones, and 2 nice strong new growths. So a relatively young plant as regards blooming. It did bloom, we did have a spike on it, and I suspect we will get 2 spikes this time round. And if the theory is correct, then given the right light and the right suitable feed, we should go back to getting the right colour. And the colour of this is all in the name, Cymbidium copper, not Cymbidium cream. Basically, the second spike on the plant that opened quite a bit after the first one didn't have the colour on it. So when it was repotted, it got put into 2 separate pots as 2 entirely different plants. And it went full circle and came back round again. So Cymbidium copper, plant number 1. Plant number 2 is the bigger version, and this was the one that I bought as Cymbidium copper and brought it home with the blooms open the right colour. So you can see how the confusion arose when the second spike opened on what looked like a single plant, totally different colour. Now this one, being the main plant, has done a couple of strange things. This in effect is a new growth, and it's produced a very small bulb at the wrong time of year. And round here is another one of those, They're not going to produce bulbs that are going to spike, I doubt. But now what it's doing is growing a proper growth at the right time of year. So we've got one good growth, and in the middle of the plant we have a second one pushing on well. Those are the growths that are going to produce proper sized bulbs and hopefully a spike on each one with the right colour blooms. That's the theory. It's got a lot of backup, this plant, for those new growths. It's got, hang on. Down in there, there's another one. I've just spotted yet another new growth. So that's a third growth on this one, behind the other two. So if all three of those bloom, it'll be a staggered blooming because these other two growths, this one's pushing on well, this one's following on behind, and then we've got one just starting. So they will mature with a gap between them. And if they all bloom, that means the plant will be in bloom for a long time. Might be nice to have all three spikes at the same time, but can't have everything. Anyway, this is doing okay. And as I said, this is sensitive to things not being right. Those things being probably light and feed. And hopefully by getting those right in this growing season, the spikes we get will be the nice deep colour. So that's those two. They are one and the same. Now we've got the silly one. This is a nuisance because it is big and it's heavy and I've got a job to carry it and it's incredibly difficult to water. It's a monster. But that's how some of them grow. It was also potted too high in the pot, which means every time I water it, half the bark washes off. It's going to be difficult to show you this one. We've got some yellowing leaves. Now, I'm afraid I'm not one of those that leaves them. These are old leaves, so there's nothing wrong with the plant. They do naturally drop their leaves over age. You often see Cymbidiums with bulbs with no leaves at all. Well, they obviously had leaves once upon a time and they've dropped off. Anyway, well, it's going to be difficult to show you this one. This is just a no ID hybrid. It's one that has the bright, I'll say bright, almost deep yellow blooms. Lovely colour, real sort of daffodil. Is it King Alfred daffodils, the bright big yellow ones? So I will try and show you this one, what's going on, but it is difficult. We'll start with the label, and from the label we've got a big growth here pushing on well, squashed by the one next to it that's coming on behind. So we've got two there. There we go. And then we've got a bit of a gap with not much going on, but actually there is, because if you look through the gap there, there's two new growths coming up in the middle of the plant. That's 4. Then we get to this one, 5, just coming out, just starting. We definitely don't want to drop this on the floor, do we? So 5, that might be it. Where did we start? By the tag? 5, so 6, 7. Yeah. 7 new growths. So in theory, 7 spikes. When I got this from Burnham's, it had quite a few spikes on the go and a couple that hadn't opened yet. So it was in bloom an incredibly long time. These growths are staggered. You know, I've got one that's here and then I've got one just starting here. Yeah, so between them there is going to be quite a gap to them reaching maturity and producing their bulb and hopefully a spike. Yeah? So again, we should get a staggered blooming, but sometimes because of the intensity of feeding and everything and the light levels, day lengths and all that, the growth pushes. And obviously as a growth comes to maturity, its top growth stops and all it does is swell up the bulb. And at that point others can actually catch up or get a closer gap between them. So we shall see. Now we come to the hard bit, trying to water it. As I said, it's heavy and the water washes half the bark off, and I have to just pour it in very gently. But what bark washes off gets picked up and put back in. But it's a big pot. It can stay in this pot a while now. There's only one growth that when it completes its bulb it will actually touch the side of the pot. All the others have got plenty of room, but there is one round here that hasn't got plenty of room. Oh, this is heavy. See if I can stand it on the edge of there. See, once these are outside, they'll get watered with a watering can, and I won't have all this silliness. I'll be mixing up the feed in a watering can and going round with them, and the water will pour straight through and come out the bottom. I might try and collect it and use it for other plants in the garden. I mean, it'll have good feed in it and everything. So, right, so what I'm going to do now is put that back in its tray. And then go round with the glass and try and pick up as much of this bark as possible and pour it back in. It might be better to just let it all fall off and not replace it, you know, just let it fall off, and eventually it will settle on a level where it doesn't matter. But unfortunately it does expose some roots. Where's my cloth? Right, so that's that big one. To say it's in a bucket. I didn't call that a pot, it's a bucket. And some of the others may need pots that size in the future. There comes a point with Cymbidiums where they've grown big enough, and you can normally tell, because the chances are their blooming will start to deteriorate a bit. You'll still get your blooms, but whereas you had like 7 blooms last time, you've only got 4 this time. You sort of think, well, I'm doing everything the same, why haven't I got the plant's just getting tired, and it's trying to support a back end that serves no purpose anymore. So there comes a point when you sort of look at it and you think, how many back bulbs have I got? I've got hardly any back bulbs. Literally, leafless bulbs on mine hardly exist yet. Let's just have a look. That one's got none. That one's got none. That one's definitely got none. My little showgirl's got 1. This one's got none. They've all got leaves on. I suspect by the end of this season there might be a couple of leafless bulbs on there. And then the last but not... That's got none, that's got none. The last but not least one is the virus one, which is going outside today. So it will be touched for the last time in here. But I'm not watering it in here, I will take it outside this time. It's going to go under the table on the decking, and it will get water thrown at it now and again. And Hannah's said, I didn't suggest this, she did, she said, because I was going to bin it, she said, why don't you just put it outside and let it fend for itself? And it'll either make it or it won't, so that's what's going to happen. But the new growth is opening up leaves that have got the same mosaic pattern on them, so I'm pretty confident it is virus. And before anybody says there is no cure, well, there is, flamethrower does it, but yeah, no cure for a virus, unfortunately. Which is a right pain, because I mean, there was a time, before people knew quite so much as they do nowadays, I believe, when whole collections became virused on the grounds that it wasn't recognised. A new plant was brought in with a virus, it wasn't identified, and all the plants were touching each other, and gradually, slowly but surely, it spread through the collection. And I've known whole collections have to be binned as a consequence. Because if you're an honest soul, which most of us orchid growers are, notice I said orchid growers, not retailers. If you are an honest soul and you have even a hint that a plant might be virus, you do not give it to anybody else. Not even if you tell them, just don't do it. If you think you've got a virus, then hold on to it, keep it to yourself, and don't let it get into somebody else's collection. I mean, the other dreaded thing that potentially we all can suffer with is the fusarium, and I've known that come out in plants from good places. What am I doing here? This doesn't fit. I know what's wrong. The geranium hasn't gone back where it goes. Ugh. Right, I've got 2 geraniums on the go here, and there is so little water left in there, it's no good for anything else. So that will go on the geraniums. That's quite a high level of feed. But they would be classed as a garden plant. I mean, you tend to feed garden plants at a lot higher level. Right. So for the last time, we will be handling this in here, but not watering it. And this is the virused plant. Now, obviously, compared with what we've previously looked at, it's a tatty looking object. It's weak. It has got it's got an old leafless pseudo bulb. It's got 3 old bulbs. This is the latest one. You can see the state of the leaves. There's your close-up. That's what mosaic virus looks like. And then we have our new growth, which, as you can see, has exactly the same patterning. So I'm happy to say that is virused. And that's now going to go outside and stay there. That frees up a shelf as well. So there we go. That's probably the last look round the Cymbidiums while they're in here, where we can actually get at them and spin them round and everything like that. Because hopefully the next time we have a look at those, it will be because they've been set up outside on their new staging. Well, it's not new, but it'll be new to them. And we can have a chat about how I'm going to look after them once they get outside. If the weather dramatically changes and turns cold, that will be delayed. But we're halfway through May. Come on! It's Midsummer's Day in about 5 weeks. Stupid weather we get in this country. Anyway, so that's a look at the Cymbidiums while they were being handled, and a chat about growth, feeding. I'm not talking about light levels in here yet. The light levels I want will be geared up to pushing these new growths on outside, where they're going to get brighter light than in here, because you've taken the roof away. They will get more fresh air around them, they will get rained on, so they get their leaves washed clean every now and again. They get hailstorms and wreck the whole thing. But they will go outside and they will be on a staging with wheels, so that they can be pushed into a position where they get some early morning sun, and then as that sun gets stronger, as the time progresses through the day, I will wheel them into a place where they're out of the sun before it gets too strong. That way they should get plenty of light, they will get appropriate feed and plenty of it, and hopefully we will get a shed load of spikes. Who knows, maybe we'll even get some so that they can go to a show. But unfortunately our shows don't match my Cymbidiums very well. We've got one in October. Well, most of mine aren't blooming then. They might be starting spikes. And then the next one's in March, and a lot of them have already finished by then. But we shall see. Maybe the yellow one will be in bloom in October. Maybe Jamie Red might be in bloom, although I suspect that may have bloomed and finished by then. Anyway, so those are the Cymbidiums. I'm not proposing to get any more because of the space they take up, and I do have to bring them in here for the winter. But if I see any of the genuine miniatures like Showgirl I will grab it, providing it's a bloom that I find attractive. Apart from that, you know, I've got, well, this was the dark red one. I'm getting rid of that now. Jamie red is at least red. I've got yellow, I've got copper, I've got bronze, and the showgirl is pink. So I've got most of the colours. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.